With the release of Lorwyn Eclipsed and Magic the Gathering, I'm unbelievably excited to finally get to venture back into this realm of dark cosmic horror mixed with ethereal fairy tales in a fantasy setting. Like, this is the kind of thing that a young Manu, snuggled up in bed with his nightcap and glass of milk, dreamed of into the night. The stuff of fables, elves, boggarts, kithkin, giants, and even this horse guy right here. I specifically dreamed of him many times. What's going on here? Why is this twinned plane half darkness, half light? We've now shifted from the age of Oona into the dawn of Isilu and Aedlu. Who are they? What's going on with Oko? Like, why is he here? And honestly, what even is a twin plane? And with so many new cool creatures and events and cards that are happening with Lorwyn-Shadowmoor, it's my job, I think, now to break it down for you before you start playing, so let's get after it. I shall bend the light and dark and show you the truth. Alright, I guess not. I tried to be cool, but this is what I get for it. Let's just get into the lore here. What is Lorwyn-Shadowmoor? Now, to be clear here, this plane was not always this actively warring half-day, half-night divided thing. That's actually the very funky part of what's really going on in Lorwyn Eclipsed. You see, historically, the plane was actually divided by eras. Every 300 years, the Great Aurora would come and the entire plane would shift between the light side, Lorwyn, and its dark side, Shadowmoor, transforming a fairy tale world into a more Penny Dreadful style creepy world. Funnily enough, Stranger Things, for obvious reasons right now, is actually a pretty apt comparison. I mean, just imagine the Upside Down consumed the world every 300 years and then it just went back to normal afterwards. And I think it's best if I sort of just set the scene for you on what these two halves actually are and what used to keep them divided, and then dig into why they're now suddenly clashing in the newest set, Lorwyn Eclipsed. So let's walk into the light first and talk about Lorwyn's side. On its surface, this is one of honestly the prettiest and most flourishing planes in all of Magic. It's a world pretty much locked in perpetual daylight where the sun never sets and the flora and fauna are ripe and bountiful. Honestly, the land itself just seems to hum with life here. And really, it's got everything you could ever dream of. Rolling meadows stretching endlessly, forests that have a faint glow soft green, and rivers that weave through the countryside like big old pretty snakes. It looks like an absolute fairy tale world because that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And the good old residents of Lorwyn reinforce this very impression too. For example, the Kithkin, small communal creatures that live in tight-knit rural communities. They are these small humanoids, yes, kinda like hobbits. We're gonna get that set this year too. Excited. If, I guess, hobbits were psychic. They have what's called communal thought weft, which is sort of like a psychic hive mind thing that they can choose to tap into, presenting themselves as the perfect creatures of cooperation and harmony with nature. And actually, one of my favorite new cards in this set that shows this off pretty perfectly is Kin Binding. I mean, look at those homies go, right? Unite your power, Kithkin. Show them the true strength of corporation. Then there are the Fae, who flutter through the skies as little tricksters and pranksters. Opposite of them, of course, we have giants, big oafs who wander the land like forgotten legends. And these guys are quite curious and strangely gentle, just like me. And heck, even the wild boggarts, chaotic goblin folk driven by unyielding cravings, come across as more comedic than threatening in this plane. Yeah, you know, they are technically dangerous, sure, but we all know that it's in like a slapstick fairy tale sort of way. So it's perfect, yeah? Amazing. No, I lied. I used dramatic effect on purpose. Lorwyn's brightness is, of course, quite deceptive. Because beneath this eternal sunshine is not a spotless mind, it is a deeply tribal society, one obsessed with belonging, purity, and roles, absolutely dominated by the apex creatures of this plane, the elves. They see themselves as wardens of beauty and perfection, judging all other beings by absolutely impossible aesthetic and moral standards, kind of like Mean Girls. And those who fail to meet their ideals are hunted, exiled, or just straight up erased. I guess also pretty much like Mean Girls. And their violence is justified not by natural order, which is an unbelievably chilling reminder that Lorwyn's horrors aren't born from darkness, but instead, ironically, the ever-present light. Kinda like the mighty Teletubby sun, its beating eyes peer down everlasting. This light leaves nowhere to hide, and all of the good and bad is right there out in the open. Okay, jeez, so what's the deal with Shadowmoor then? If I wanted more Shadow, I'd play Sonic the Hedgehog or get the secret lair here.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I don't know, like, Shadowmoor is of course not a different world from Lorwyn. Some planes have different planets, but this one has different phases, as I explained earlier. Shadowmoor is still the same place as Lorwyn, but after 300 years, when the sun has gone out. This unnatural dusk then blankets the entire plane in perpetual twilight, like the best Zelda game where colors become muted, the wildland holds its breath, and it kind of feels very tense all around. Kinda like my stomach after a very spicy curry, Shadowmoor is very dark and very twisted. But honestly, to me personally, the most unsettling thing about Shadowmoor is that its people are the absolute same ones also as in Lorwyn, but they don't remember it. History is just completely erased, rewritten by fear and instinct, and the same races still walk around the land, but their values have now gotten all jumbled up in a very nasty style. For example, the Kithkin, once defined by communal warmth, now struggle to survive in some caustic terror. Their thought weft has become a feedback loop of panic, amplifying fear until entire villages lock up their borders and create these unnaturally high tariffs for some reason. I mean, I guess that's relevant too. They then pretty much go full Snowden, spying on each other, bolstering their defenses, and lashing out at anything unfamiliar. Kinda like my cat Gojo, honestly. Where is he? Oh yeah, he didn't want to be in the room. They're also responsible for creating arguably the most iconic creatures from this entire set block, which are the Scarecrows. Yes, the Scarecrows in Lorwyn are Kithkin constructs typically made from the wood of dead tree folk and seem fairly content in their role as massive hypocrites, basically. They do not defend the Kithkin, but often end up slaughtering them instead, ironically, which makes it kinda crazy that Scarecrows have continued to be constructed very often across many Lorwyn sets. Now, I know what you're already asking yourself, what of these elves, the absolute top dogs on this plane? Well, as we talked about, they were formerly obsessed with beauty and then shifted into absolute predatory hunters. In Shadowmoor, they now stalk the forests like apex legends, and their worship of beauty becomes a true, pure yearning for strength. Now, only the strong survive. That's the motto. It's full-on Darwin basic. Well, I guess Darwin was fittest, but you get the idea. Now, geographically and physically, Shadowmoor feels so much more like claustrophobic, like a studio apartment in New York City. If you know, you know. Now, Shadowmoor is what happens when a society built on rigid roles falls to absolute shambles and the darkness starts creeping in, consuming all like a big evil Kirby, I guess. So you've now got the basics of how this plane works, so what's going on now? Why are they suddenly no longer alternating, and what does that actually mean? Well, for that, let's now shift into the history of the plane, since that will help build some much needed context, I think, for you to see how we've gotten to this newly combined plane that this set specifically is focused on. The history of Lorwyn-Shadowmoor. Alrighty, so to really understand what's going on with Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, you kind of have to run it back to the beginning and the low-key baddie at the center of everything on this plane, because for literal millennia, this plane's endless cycle of light and dark was actively enforced by one woman. She was the master of puppets, ruling over all with her iron fist. She was Oona, queen and mother of all fairies. Basically, she manipulated the Great Aurora to dominate the plane, having complete control in a way that's honestly super specific and very unique, which is the type of thing that I absolutely love in planes like this one specifically, a nuanced, unique mechanic that isn't that broken on like the cosmic multiverse scale, but specifically allows for absolute beast mode on a very specific plane. So, what was it? Well, Oona found a way to preserve her body, and most importantly, she could preserve her own memories across each flip of the plane. As we learned earlier, they usually get erased. So while everyone else became their weird counter shadow self, every 300 years, Oona just remained absolutely constant. And obviously, as you can imagine, not losing all her memories every 300 years let her pivot into an absolutely dominant prime position. It's a fairly simple yet very broken strategy for ruling over this plane specifically, and that system worked real wonders for a long time, right up until the Great Mending happened, when the multiverse was healed from a bunch of time rifts, which for some reason messed up Yuna's Aurora magic. Dread's big multiversal event somehow messed up a plane? Can't believe that happened. That must be the first time, right? Well, realizing that the Aurora might finally be affecting her, Oona locked absolutely in. She started going full Voldemort, Ganondorf, and all for one by splitting her soul and making avatars of herself to avoid a potential death. You know, pretty much what any ancient Fae god queen would reasonably do. I'd do the same if I was in the position of being a fairy queen. Well, then her first avatar started rebelling against her, so she created a duplicate of a Mornsong elf named Maralen and embedded a fragment of her own soul inside her. And honestly, that plan was solid. I like it. I can get behind it. Except that Marilen's duplicate did not get behind it, as you can imagine. She gained some true sentience, realized what she was, and then joined forces with some others across the plane. An elf named Riss, the Kithkin Bridget, the Marrow Sick, and the Flamekin Ashling, and even the ancient treefool Kulfinor all came together to investigate Oona's manipulations. And then, when the Aurora finally turned Lorwyn back into Shadowmoor once more, they just whooped her Lorwyn style. I mean, I imagine there were many magical blasts and sticks and delicate punches thrown, but eventually, actually yes, Oona was defeated. Well, at least physically defeated. But somewhere that I simply cannot tell you about, Oona's consciousness still survived, slowly recovering in secret while she searched for a way getting her powers back. Now, just to be clear, unless something crazy happens, I don't think that Oona's returning in the set release, but don't be surprised if she does run it back face style, like we don't have all the set lore quite yet as of the making of this video. But as for what happened when the Fae Queen vanished, well, things got very, very messy. You see, without the Great Aurora now, nothing was truly facilitating the flip between light and dark. So instead, Lorwyn and Shadowmoor just began bleeding into each other. This now marked the beginning of the Pendulum Year. Across the plane, pockets of Lorwyn's glorious light erupted inside Shadowmoor's gloom, which, as you can guess, totally biffed people's brains up. Like, depending on where they were and how these flickers between the two aspects happened, people's bodies and minds were completely torn. They changed, sometimes yes, even physically, sometimes mentally, and sometimes forgetting entire lives that they had lived just moments before. It was basically like Super Amnesia Turbo Edition, and eventually the chaos started to slow. The border somewhat stabilized, oh, thank goodness. That's much better. No more Oona, everything stabilizing. Surely nothing will go wrong on a cosmic level, right, guys? Right, wizards? Well, on the Split Horizons, people began to see two colossal figures walking the edge of the world. In the light, there was Erdu, the incarnation of Lorwyn, and in the dark, there was Isilu, the incarnation of Shadowmoor. Oona's absence allowed the cosmic forces of this plane to re-establish their divine aspects, and thus these twin beasts started to arise. For about 40 years, this fragile balance then somewhat held, which is an oddly specific number we got, but hey, thanks for that, wizards. I appreciate a little bit of an extra timeline. So for quite a while, these two aspects of the plane lived together in somewhat of a harmony. But then, of course, everything changed when, yes, the Phyrexians attacked. In classic Magic the Gathering fashion, this mechanical hive mind went absolutely psychosocial on everyone, invading planes across the Blind Eternities, which is the big bowl of soup that, you know, all the planes sort of float in, which is the best I guess, metaphor I have for this, the invasion shattered the harmony of the plane once again, of course, and on Lorwyn's side, the bigoted elves were nearly wiped out completely, or worse, completed. In case you didn't know, this is the unnerving act that the Phyrexians used to expand their forces, converting creatures into their own twisted, perfect forms. But also, in a totally ironic and disturbing turn of fate, Phyrexia barely even had to change those elves to begin with, because their blatant supremacy and racist ideologies just pivoted very cleanly into the efficiency that the Phyrexian prided themselves on anyways. But for the surviving untainted elves, they had to make arguably an even worse choice. They were forced into something unthinkable, like something I can't even begin to imagine. Like, it literally makes me want to vomit. Ugh, they had to cooperate with other people. Disgusting what some people have to do. Now, on the Shadowmoor side of things, it went a little bit differently. There was no unified front. The dark side went to a raw and desperate resistance. Creatures like the boggarts hurled themselves into the enemy lines knowing that they wouldn't survive, but they dang sure tried to prove a pretty decent point. And yes, in case that wasn't clear, I do respect the boggarts a lot more than the elves in this plane. And just to sort of explain what happened at this time on a, grander multiverse scale, the great chronomancer Teferi, I talked about this in a different video, led a charge from his home nation on Zalfir against the new Phyrexians, and part of that plan was the spreading of a magical angelic substance known as Halo. This Halo then reached out far and wide throughout the planes, and the Halo allowed combat to evolve for many of those planes, including Shadowmoor. This then allowed the Shadowmoor Kithkin, driven by an overwhelming xenophobia, to lead the final charge once Halo seemed to infinitely flood the multiverse. They crushed the invading flood of Phyrexians utterly, and then the Shadow Kithkin sort of just dipped, sealing themselves away from the world forever. I do that sometimes too, that's called depression. And in the end, the plane survived, but it didn't quite heal, and there's even still remnants of Phyrexian zombies like the Skinrender plaguing the commingled plane to this very day. And that's how we got to where we're right now with Lorwyn Eclipsed. The current era of Lorwyn-Shadowmoor in Lorwyn Eclipsed. So, what's really going on in the current storyline of this plane? Honestly, it's a lot weirder than anything that's ever come before, and that's saying quite a lot, I think, considering that an immortal fairy mommy was dominating everyone's brains in two different versions of the universe for, literal millennia. In the current era of Lorwyn-Shadowmoor, the world no longer flips cleanly between light and dark. Instead, the boundaries just kind of grind against each other, kind of like tectonic plates, I guess, and where they collide, something new is born. These regions are now known as Eclipsed realms, and they represent a third state that now newly exists on the plane. These spots are now neither Lorwyn nor Shadowmoor, they are a fusion of both of them. They're kind of like Gogeta or Vegito or who else fuses? Oh, yeah, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. You get it. They're in the Eclipse. Light and dark Eclipse. The Eclipsed realms can be small borderlands or just straight up large territories. Heck, I bet you that there are even some medium-sized pockets of space too. Didn't expect that, did you? Now, regardless, they're all sharing the same unsettling rules. The sun and the moon just hang motionless in the sky, frozen in this, permanent standoff. Light and darkness kind of coexist in seemingly impossible ways. For example, shadows glow faintly, sunbeams are hollow, and the land itself is just all sorts of jacked up, man. These places don't transition like the auroras, they're just straight up wrong. As if the plane is trying to solve a paradox and is failing at it pretty hard, and living in an eclipsed realm is even worse. Creatures who enter these regions don't immediately change like they would during Morningtide or Eventide, which, is what it was called when the plane originally flipped. They do keep their memories. In fact, they actually begin to remember a little bit too much. It's like when someone reminds you of something that you did in high school. Like, you know, that time you prepared a huge flower arrangement to ask out a girl to the school dance, but then found out that someone else had already asked her that morning, and so you desperately tried to get rid of the flowers before anyone realizes what was going on, but then she sees you for tossing them and asks for them because you were gonna throw them out anyways, and it just shatters your soul. You know how it is, right? Yeah. So basically, memories from Lorwyn and Shadowmoor start bleeding together, and the contradictions do not resolve at all. Over time, eclipsed beings start to lose emotions, desire, and connection to the outside world, so pretty much seasonal depression, but like a little bit worse. Eventually, they stop moving altogether, calcifying into inert husks known as calciform. Good on them for already coming up with a name for this. Nope. Not that. That's actually, that one's a Pokemon. But that's totally what my brain read the first time that I saw the word Calciform too. On top of that, there are the cosmically confusing elemental incarnations that are split between the two aspects too. Concepts embodied in forms such as emptiness and deceit, twisted manifestations of the darkest traits of Shadowmoor, but there's also like psychedelic Lorwyn ones such as belonging and impulsivity that kind of show off the weirder nature of emotions. But above all of this, and essentially at the core of this entire set, are the indifferent forces. Erdu, the incarnation of Lorwyn's sun, and Isilu, the embodiment of Shadowmoor's moon. When one of them walks the land, the other is supposed to slumber, and the plane subtly reshapes itself beneath their passing. Now, over the many Lorwyn-Shadowmoor sets we've gotten so far, it's become very clear that these two guys do not really care about mortals, so naturally, people started worshipping them anyways. Yay. Cults of the Sun rally behind that big griffin thing, Erdu, seeking to force the entire plane back into eternal Lorwyn through rituals and sacrifices in an act of radiant devotion. Classic Lorwyn side, being a little bit too messed up in the brain from all that sunlight. On the other hand, moon adherents answer to the goat dinosaur Isilu instead, guarding burial grounds and sacred vigils, believing that Shadowmoor's darkness is the only honest state that the world has ever known, which, like, you know, kind of low-key I think is, but it's still all sorts of messed up, just I think not as messed up as the light side, but maybe you feel differently. And as if that all wasn't enough yet, a powerful planeswalker has now returned home during all of this chaos, and he might just do some more harm than good once again. He is the much hated, I would say, dominant Oko, a fairy with mysterious powers ready to center himself amongst all of this Eclipse nonsense. I'm definitely amped to see how he's gonna impact everything in the big lore, especially also as a card, because, you know, as we know, Oko is a little bit problematic. So let's hope they don't break him again. That's not all though. To add some extra mess to all of this, there are rare artifacts now known as reliquaries. They're fashioned from fragments of Erdu or Isilu, and these objects basically allow their wielders to resist the plane's mind-body split so they can actually retain their form and memory through Morningtide, Eventide, and yes, even through the Eclipsed realms. And honestly, they come in pretty clutch for me too when I try to avoid confronting my inner, more twisted self too. So, that is the present day Lorwyn-Shadowmoor. I just can't wait to crack open some packs and see what else awaits me in this messed up fantasy world, and low-key, I'm pretty excited for these anime treatments that they have, but also they're so expensive, the collector boosters. But let me know if you enjoy this deep dive into planes as well as my typical Planeswalker content, and if you want to know more about Teferi, the man who helped save this very plane that you're playing right now, through his diehard actions to destroy the Phyrexians, you should watch that video by clicking on the screen right here next to me.